Alright, the TV's on, but it's NHL 17 that's on. I'm currently creating players. It's bright out because it's sunny. I know that's odd because it's West Coast BC, but it's actually sunny today. We'll see how long that lasts and whether or not it's a white Christmas. So we're on the eve of World Junior Championships. And I've had people asking me about previewing the World Junior Championships. And honestly, my interest in the World Junior Championships is not now what it was 15, 20 years ago. It is severely depleted. A lot of the time, it's that it just doesn't seem to matter to me as much as it did before. Maybe I'm sportsed out. Maybe back in the early 90s, late 80s, there wasn't a whole lot of sports on television. And I've seen one too many guys who look great at the tournament and then never make the NHL. So I used to view it as, hey, this is a springboard. These guys are going to be great in the NHL. I remember Brent Tully. I'm not going to member berries this. Hockey News has a member berries article on their website, and it's really, really embarrassing. Somebody should be fired for it. Go over to Hockey News and look at it if you think I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. But Brent Tully looked great for Team Canada, and he was a Canucks draft pick, and I was really excited, and he never made the NHL. And he is one of many who I've watched play juniors, and I've got really excited about them, and then never make the NHL. That's not the only reason that my interest isn't what it was in the World Juniors. It just feels like the intensity in international hockey isn't what it used to be because all of these players play each other all the time now. Most Europeans will come over and play World Juniors here or play in the junior leagues here. And you have other international tournaments. It's kind of taken that feeling away. It's sort of like what I said about the World Cup that we had back in September. Remember that? Neither do I. And comparing it with the Canada Cups from the 80s, in terms of back in the 80s, there was some mystery there. And there is no mystery now with these players. We all know them. There's scouting all around the world, and we know all the scouting reports on all these players. And the majority of them have already played against each other on numerous occasions. Back in 1987, there was a brawl. There was a brawl. With Canada leading 4-2 midway through the second period and looking as though it might start a run at fulfilling its destiny to win the championship. What started as a scuffle between Sergei Shesterikov and Everett Sanapas triggered the nadir of international hockey history. That shoving match deteriorated to the point where the benches emptied and there were full-on fights, complete with exchanging haymakers going on all over the ice. Brendan Shanahan was in the middle of that. There's a big preamble about Brendan Shanahan. And if you want to, this magazine is available on, I know it's on Canadian newsstands. I doubt it's on American newsstands. I just have a feeling World Juniors is bigger in Canada than in the States. The roots of what caused the brawl and just who should shoulder the blame have been debated for years. There are Canadians who believe the Soviets, knowing they couldn't medal, were intent on goading Canada into a brawl to destroy its chance of winning a medal. It's a great conspiracy theory. After all, it was smack dab in the middle of hockey's version of the Cold War. It's also pretty far-fetched. The Soviets never fought and really had no idea what they were doing. Some players have opined that the Canadians, accustomed to seeing benches cleared, went into it with the thought of pairing up with an opposing player and tussling a little before the order was restored and the game resumed. The Soviets, unaccustomed to the code, probably thought that they had to go out there and actually fight. I recall Valery Zalapukin got hurt and separated his shoulders, said Sergei Fedorov. Zalapukin was one of my favorite players too. I liked him. He sort of went down on one knee, and a Canadian player, I don't remember who, was taking some punches at him. Back then in the Soviet Union, we didn't know what we were doing, and the referee wasn't doing much. Valery was just getting beat up, and his arm was just hanging. There's a lot of that in that fight. A lot of that. Not the proudest moment for Canada. I wasn't happy at all, and I was 14 when this took place. We know Evgeny Davidov, who would go on to play 155 NHL games and gain a reputation as being a soft player, was the first to jump off the bench. He was a bit of a loose cannon, a weird dude, said Dave McElwain, who played briefly with Davidov in Winnipeg and Ottawa. For him to jump first really wasn't a surprise, even though he didn't play that way when he was over here. We knew that Zelepukin, we know that Zelepukin, as stand-up a player as you could find, was playing with a separated shoulder and was being double-teamed by Canadian players. We know it was a chippy, nasty game from the start, and the pre-game warm-up had a foreboding feel to it. Everybody was skating around yelling at each other, Simpson said. That's Craig Simpson, I believe. Everyone was really fired up. We're yelling stuff at them. They're yelling stuff at you. We're yelling like, F you, you effing commies. Which is, well, they're teenagers, so of course. What we didn't know, or at least what was yet to be chronicled about that day, was the fact that Anatoly Tarasov, the father of the Big Red Machine, visited the Soviet dressing room before the game. Alexander Galchenyuk, whose American-born and raised son Alex is a rising star with the Montreal Canadiens, recalled Tarasov coming into the Soviet room to give a speech. It was a great speech, and we were so pumped, Galchenyuk said. When we came out, it was like we were ready to go to war. Before the warm-up, a Canadian guy starts talking bad to us, and we almost started a fight in the corridor. After the tournament, I got a call from the Soviet Federation. They asked how it happened, and of course I didn't tell them it was because Anatoly Tarasov pumped us up as much. I can't say that. It's not his fault. We were so young and we didn't handle it properly. There were red flags all over the place before the tournament, and early in the game, Canada, after all, was coached by Bert Templeton, whose nickname was Dirty Bert, though he was in the process of shedding that reputation. One of his assistants was Pat Burns, a former cop who took and gave no quarter himself. Of the 18 skaters on the Canadian team, half of them were in the midst of posting at least 100 penalty minutes in junior that season, and that 9 didn't include rugged defenseman Steve Chason, who had 73 penalty minutes in just 45 games with the Detroit Red Wings in 86-87, or Luke Richardson, who finished his NHL career with more than 2,000 penalty minutes. The Canadiens were no strangers to bench-clearing brawls. In fact, they got into a line brawl against a team of Swiss professionals in a tune-up game. And prior to the game against the United States on New Year's Eve, Darren Turcotte, one of the few Americans who played in Major Junior, he and Adam Burt played for Templeton's North Bay Centennials, stressed to his teammates that whatever they did, they weren't to cross the red line during the warm-up, because that would be a violation of the code and a serious show of disrespect to the Canadians. Bob Corkum of the U.S. team was doing a pass drill with a teammate and inadvertently crossed the line, only to be greeted with a two-hand slash across the legs from Simpson, who had an injured shoulder and was backing Jimmy Wade up for the game. Oh, so Simpson's a goaltender. I assumed it was. I should have read right from the start, I guess. Corkum just looked at me, and then he hit me with his glove and just launched me, Simpson said. Shanahan recalled something that resembled a scene out of Slapshot. That guy dropped our goalie with a right hook and turned around and saw 18 players skating at him. According to Shanahan, American defenseman Brian Leetch once told him he paired up with one of his teammates just to look occupied during the chaos. He was thinking, Shanahan said, what kind of league did these guys come from? The Canadiens were far from a swashbuckling outfit. Shanahan, Pierre Turgeon, and Theoren Fleury all went on to put up more than 1,000 points in the NHL, but the top line for Canada was Dave McElwain between Pat Elenick and Dave Latta. As he became a year later, Waite was the main reason Canada was even in contention for the medal. Jimmy Waite was a decent goalie in juniors. Simpson thinks the 1987 team was the toughest World Junior squad Canada ever assembled, and it was difficult to argue with them. Everett Sanapass was coming off a season in which he had 320 major penalty minutes in junior. Mike Keane, who surprised many an opponent with a lethal right hand, only had 800 penalty minutes in his career, in part because he was a player opponents knew not to try to intimidate. That's true. Mike Keane was pretty badass. He wasn't a fighter; he was a nice guy, but man, you wouldn't want to get in a fight with him. Not that the Soviets would have known any of this. They were nameless, faceless players to the Canadians, who had the same status among the Soviets. If the game had been played today, we all would have known about the exploits of Fedorov and Alexander McGillney for years. Fans everywhere would have been occupied by Shanahan and Turgeon as they battled for status of being the number 1 overall pick in the 1987 draft. There would be an online lottery simulator that would update every team's chances of winning the first overall pick that day. From the opening face-off, the game had a nasty tone to it. Before the puck even left the circle, on the opening face-off, Shesterikov had elbowed McElwain, who responded with a cross-check. Elenick took a slash, and Latta was hauled to the ice. After scoring the first goal of the game at 4:34 of the opening period, Fleury slid to the center ice, turned to the Soviet bench, and pretended to be brandishing a machine gun, shooting down the Soviet players with his stick. That's good sportsmanship. Canadians were expecting the Soviets to play the slick, skilled hockey they'd grown accustomed to seeing from them, the one that had won the Soviet Union the title in Hamilton the year before. Instead, they encountered a team that seemed to be willing as they were to make it an alley fight, and the Soviets had muscle. Vladimir Konstantinov, who just that season had made the transaction from center to defense, headbutted Greg Hoggood in the face and broke his nose. Konstantinov was really tough. He's known for being the guy who was in the wheelchair when the Red Wings won that second cup and they gave him the cup. It was very emotional. No, Konstantinov was a badass as well. We had no idea how to fight, said Galchenyuk, but we were strong. If the Soviets were intent on thwarting Canada's chances for a medal, the players interviewed for this article are either covering up one of the greatest examples of hockey skullduggery of all time, or it simply wasn't true. There were also allegations the Soviets were punished by not being fed after games, and they were told by their coach, Vladimir Vasiliev, that serious repercussions were waiting for them when they got home. They were a ticking time bomb as a group, Shanahan said. But former NHLer Vladimir Malahov begged to differ. People can believe whatever they want. That wasn't the case, he said. If the situations had been reversed and Canada was out of it with the Soviets hanging on to a chance at a medal, you might be tempted to believe it. At least that's how the stereotype would have played out, said Simpson, who coincidentally went on to become the GM of Dynamo Minsk in the KHL and is now a sports radio personality in Ottawa. Exactly 1 year to the day after the punch-up in Pistani, 4 of Canada's players from that team, Waite, Hoggood, Fleury, and Chris Joseph, were part of a Canadian club that defeated Poland 9-1 to capture the gold medal in Moscow. 5 of the players who were on the ice at Pistani the year before, Waite in goal, Hoggood on defense, and Fedorov, McGillney, and Fleury were named to the 1988 All-Tournament team. Waite is remembered for 2 things in that tournament. The most important was almost single-handedly leading Canada to the gold medal, which the Canadians won on the strength of a 3-2 win over the Soviets on New Year's Day. Canada was outshot 40-16 by the Soviet Union, including 17-4 in the third period, in an individual performance by Waite that is considered one of the greatest in history. The second was dropping an F-bomb during his nationally televised post-game interview. That's on YouTube. You can find it, I believe. The year after that in Anchorage, Alaska, Fedorov and McGillney teamed with a youngster by the name of Pavel Bure to form one of the most lethal lines in the history of the tournament. So it was quite the brawl. It was quite the brawl. And, I mean, there's been books written about it. There's been all kinds of stuff written about it. There's been all kinds of stuff that's gone on. Yeah, that was number one apparent. The Canadians have to brawl with the Soviets. Blah 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 blah. Both teams got thrown out. That was the end of that. Both teams got thrown out of the tournament, and it was insane. It was an insane brawl, and you don't see that kind of hatred in hockey now. And you just it'll never happen again. That kind of stuff can never happen again because of the fact that Canada and the Soviets playing against each other didn't really know each other. That allowed that kind of hatred to get in there because that's the fear of the unknown, right? And hating the unknown. Look how strong that is in politics. No, I'm not talking U.S. I'm talking worldwide. Right now, the fear of the unknown, the fear of what's not like you, we have to protect ourselves first is really running the political landscape in many countries right now. And in hockey, that's what was part of that brawl. And then you just have the fact that a lot of the Canadian team was pretty tough guys. So, anyways, that's my view on the World Junior Brawl from 1987. It was honestly the event that got me into watching World Juniors because I was like, wow, because I was a young teen. It wasn't on TV as much as it is now. It wasn't promoted as much as it is now, but I got into it at that point. And then by the early 90s, I was totally hooked on World Junior hockey. I will probably give it a shot this year, but considering the time constraints I have and just in general, and I'm trying to watch NHL games, we'll see what happens. But I may give this one a shot because there are a number of players playing for Team Canada, likely Sweden, US, that I'm going to want to watch. And you guys, knowing what teams I cheer for, can probably guess who I'm going to be wanting to watch. But I figured I would do a video today about that brawl, touch on World Junior Hockey. Let me know in the comments below if you're old enough to remember that brawl, what you thought of it. Rules have changed since then in the NHL as well. Those kinds of brawls don't occur anymore. And those are some pretty tough guys. If you look at those names, those are pretty tough guys. So let me know what you think. And if you're just browsing through, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And I will be back with more content soon. I'm not wishing anybody happy holidays yet because I'm still doing a video, at least one video tomorrow. Because of course I am. Because as I mentioned on my TV and movie channel, and this is sort of a serious note here, not everybody has great fun family time at Christmas. Christmas can be a very stressful or very lonely time of year. So if I put up a couple videos that kill some time for somebody, so don't be surprised if there's a long video tomorrow. Um, it's the least I can do. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you all again soon.